Are you afraid of failure? Are you scared of messing up? Are you one of those people that, you wish you could just stop being so afraid and just crack on? Are you feeling really uncomfortable with the idea of not having all the answers all the time? If you are, don't worry, I've got you covered. Because what I'm going to go in today is the real reason behind fear of failure and where it comes from so that you can start doing something about it. Hi, I'm Caroline. I am your personal performance coach, and welcome to this channel. This is all about simplifying high performance for people that want to work smarter, not harder. So if that sounds interesting, feel free, subscribe below. I'd love to have you in this community. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Honestly, I love this topic. And I know that sounds really weird because it's about something like failure. It's negative, right? It's awful. Well, no, it's not. And we're going to get into exactly why that is. But I love it because it's one of the things that I get approached with the most in my coaching work and a lot of my exec coaching. And funnily enough, the more I get it, the more I realize how important the reframe around this is, because it doesn't matter what level you're at. Everybody is afraid of this. Everybody is afraid of messing up, especially if they are high performers, high achievers, and they're always looking for that next thing that's going to take them to the top. And this is why we need to deal with it, right? Because we're never going to get to the top if we are constantly afraid of making mistakes. Now, across the board, this is the most common mindset issue that I come across. And like I said, it gets worse the more senior you become. And it's because the impact is way bigger. The risk of getting it wrong is way, way bigger the more senior we become. If you think about being a junior, somebody that is maybe in their first role or in the first couple of years, the impact is pretty low. It's you turn up to work and you're learning when you're a junior or you're entry level. You're the doer in the team. You get stuff done, you execute tasks, and as long as you tick things off, if you don't tick one or two things off, it's not the end of the world. There's an element of risk to everything, but it's way lower if you're at that entry level stage. Whereas compare that to a leader, a senior director, a business owner. If they get it wrong, the impact's way bigger, right? There's an impact on the team. There's an impact on revenue. There's an impact on whether clients stay or go. There's an impact on how much of a product gets sold. The impact is way bigger. And because the risk is bigger, we bully ourselves even more. So the higher up the level and the ladder we get, the worse it gets, which is why the earlier on we can learn to deal with this, the better, because it's going to stand us in good stead later down the line, no matter what position you take, no matter the direction of your career, the industry you're in. The earlier you can learn to deal with this, the better. And the important thing to remember is, it doesn't matter what level you are at. All that changes is the context. All that changes is the numbers, So like I said, industry doesn't matter, sector doesn't matter, role doesn't matter, business structure doesn't matter, company size doesn't matter. You can be 10 people, you can be 10,000 people globally. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you deal with it in terms of mindset, in terms of your performance and your mental resilience when it comes to that idea of making mistakes and failures. Only the context changes. So where does this come from? It's all to do with the way that the mind works at its most basic level. So let me just walk you through that idea. We are built to prioritize threats. Okay, so let's work out maybe a couple of examples of this. So if you imagine that we're back in caveman days and we're back in that prehistoric time and we're tribal and all that kind of thing, our brains are evolving around that idea of a tribal mentality. Let's say that you are walking along and you come across a raspberry bush or an apple tree or something that is seen as a reward. And you think, ooh, I could use some raspberries, or I really want an apple. But there's a tiger underneath it, or there's a bear at the entrance to it, or there's something like that. You're obviously not going to go near it. You're going to go and find another one. We've been trained to do that. Our brains are wired to prioritize threat and risk way above reward. Because if it didn't work like that, we'd go after the apples or the raspberries or the whatever it is. Just think, oh, it doesn't matter that there's a snake there. I'll go and get it anyway. And then we would die. So we are quite literally wired to prioritize risk, to prioritize threats. And that's great. It's led to our survival up to this point, right? But it doesn't help us in the workplace because we don't want to do that in the workplace. We want to prioritize reward. We want to aim for our biggest ambitions and just go after them. And why am I so afraid of doing it? Because your brain is prioritizing the risks associated. So the more senior you get and the bigger the risk is, the more likely you are to be afraid of going after it, to be afraid of failing because the risk is so much bigger. So when you actually lay this out in those terms, it makes perfect sense, right? It makes sense why we feel this way. So for thousands of years, that fear of failure has kept us alive. And to our brains, that is the most important thing. But in a modern context, it doesn't work. And what we need to do is learn how to shift with it, to shift that mindset, to reframe that fear of failure so that we can go after the things we really want. Let's put this in the perspective of an exec level role, because that's going to give us something to cling to. That's going to give us a framework, okay, to process this and to work along it. Because the prehistoric story is nice and kind of sounds funny and everything, but it doesn't help us now. We need to put this in a modern context. So imagine that you are that early level exec role, okay? So maybe somebody that has been in their role for 3 to 5 years, maybe something like that. They're not quite at management level yet, but they've been doing it a while. They're a good doer. They're a good person that gets things done, that executes tasks that you can always rely on. Yeah. So they're that person who executes everything and they just get on with it. So the risk of them doing something like we talked about before is pretty low. And because they've got that credibility within the business, they've been there a while, they've been doing it perfectly well, the confidence is there in themselves. So they don't necessarily feel that fear of failure. If they have to put an email campaign out, they've done it 1,000 times. If they have to call a client or pick up the phone to a prospect or any of those jobs, it's pretty low risk because our confidence is high. We've done it 1,000 times. Yeah. So they're great at that role, but now they're ready for that promotion. You know, they've been there, like I said, 3 to 5 years. They're ready for that next level, which is usually managing somebody, because the way that most roles, most places work is that that's the next rung on the hierarchy. They become a manager. They become a leader for the first time. And that promotion now brings a much higher risk because we're doing stuff we've never done before. We've got multiple people. We might let them down. We might let this business down. You know, they've trusted us for 5 years. What if we let them down? What if we're not a good manager? We've never done this before. What the hell? This is the fight that's going on in your head. Maybe not consciously, but it's there. And that's where this fear of failure starts to creep up and up and up because the risk is increasing beyond what we have experienced up to this point. So up until now, we've been perceived really, really well within the business. That credibility is there, but now things are starting to change and they're not equipped to lead. They're not equipped for the consequences of failure. And that's the real key here. It's that we're not equipped for the consequences of the failure, not necessarily the failure itself, because we've all been there, right? We've been in the position where the worst case scenario has happened. Maybe you were filming something and all the batteries went. Or maybe you were at a client meeting and they came out with that thing that you've been worrying about for ages. Maybe the worst has happened, but you always deal with it. But it's the run up to it. It's that you're not equipped to deal with the potential consequences of that failure. It's the run up. It's not the actual thing itself. And you start to think about the impact on the company, the impact on that team of you leading if you do it wrong. And they need to have all the answers all the time when they don't really, but that's how they feel. Feel like I don't have all the answers. I only know how to do my thing really well. And now I manage people. I don't know how to do that. Again, it's the risk factor. The risk is going up. And that's where, if you watch my last video on imposter syndrome, I talked a little bit about this as well. It's that idea of risk. It's that idea of not being good enough and not being maybe worthy of it. You might start to question, well, if I can't do this, then maybe I don't deserve to be a leader. Maybe I don't deserve this right now. Maybe this isn't right. Maybe I should back away. This is really, really important, because this type of fear of failure, these things that currently hold us back, they're really just learning curves, but we can't see it as that. And that's the really frustrating thing. And that's what we need to learn to do, because we want the apples, we want the raspberries, we want the big things that we want in life, but our mindset is holding us back. But the great thing about your mindset is that it can change. You know, if neuroplasticity has taught us anything, which is the brain's ability to change constantly, it's that you can change your behavior, you can change your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, as long as it's strong enough and as long as you have the right mechanism to do it. And that's what I'm going to give you next. Because this idea of fear of failure, it all hinges on the idea of creating a safe space to make that mindset shift. That's often what's missing. We don't have, whether it is a one-to-one with a manager that we trust, or we don't have a coach or a mentor that we can rely on to create that safe space for thinking. That is often what is missing. We don't have it. And because we don't have that safety of it's okay in this space, in this hour that you're with me, or this half day or whatever, you can make as many mistakes as you want. You can ask as many stupid questions as you want. You can fail. It's okay. Without that safe space, we often don't ever know how to create that for ourselves. So it doesn't happen. We stay the same. So those things only grow and grow and grow. And creating that safe space is critical for that learning, for that development. You know, nobody ever did anything without some degree of failure. Everything around, like, look, I don't care where you're watching this, whatever room you're in or space you're in, look around you. Every single thing in that room was built through multiple failures and multiple mistakes. Every course you ever took, every idea in your head has the potential to grow into something, but it's often the fear of failure and making mistakes that holds us back. But all a mistake is the opportunity to learn. That's the reframe. We need a safe space for thinking, and we need to see it for what it is, which is the opportunity to learn. And if you don't believe me, I want you to go back in your mind as early as you can to, which is usually about when you were yay big, you know? It's usually when you're around 5 years old, something like that. Usually people can remember play and a time when you were allowed to make all the mistakes in the world because you knew nothing. Yeah, everything was brand new. Everything was for the first time. And when we were that age, we were able to fail as much as we wanted, and we were never negative about it. We never were hard on ourselves about it. When you tried to walk dozens of times a day for weeks before you actually did it. The first time you ever pulled yourself up on a sofa or a chair leg or anything like that, you will have tried multiple times. You didn't stop after the first time you did it. I know, because you're watching this. And if you're watching this, chances are you learned how to walk and talk and think. And that's all you need to be able to do. All you need is to reframe it as an opportunity to learn and to get better and to do it again. So we need to reintroduce this idea of failure in a positive light. And we need to do it in a way that seems natural. We need to do it in a way that reduces risk. We need to create a safe space for failure, and we need to reduce the level of risk associated with that failure, which is why a good way of building up a tolerance to failure is to do it in the form of a new hobby or a hobby that you used to do years ago. You might have done something like painting when you were younger and you loved it. And After years and years and years of just life and work and everything else, you just haven't done it in years. But you remember that you enjoyed it. Try it again. Be okay with failure because the risk is really low and you have that memory there of being okay with not doing it well the first time you pick up the paintbrush. Or it might be a sport. It might be that you used to play football when you were younger and maybe you want to pick it up again and see if there's a team around you. And it's okay if you fall on your face a few times. You'll get better. The risk is low and you're creating a safe space for failure. That is the key to this. It's not that we're going to get rid of failure. Failure is critical to you achieving anything that you want in your life. What we do need to do is create a safe space for it and improve our tolerance of failure. Failure is an amazing thing. It's a learning. It's every single mistake takes you a step closer to the thing that you actually want. Doesn't matter what that is. But it's often just our perception around it. And this is the really, if we're getting right down into it, this is the real reason you feel a fear of failure. After years and years and years of going down a certain niche and being that doer and developing into the point in your career where you are right now, at some point you got used to being right. You got used to having all the answers all the time. And that strayed you away from that idea of being a child and it being okay to mess up. You got used to being right all the time. So now when you try to apply for a role at a different company or set up on your own as a consultant or go freelance or just try anything new or a new tool comes in, if you work in tech like I do and the digital space, there's a new algorithm all the time. There's a new thing all the time. If you work in marketing, you get used to failure all the time because there's always a reason why a campaign didn't work. There's so many opportunities to learn from all those things, but we get used to being right. So we will often shy away from situations where we could look a fool or we could make a mistake because then they might find out that we're a fraud, which again comes down to imposter syndrome, right? And what we need to do is lower the risk, create a safe space for failure, and we need to practice that and we need to get used to it again. We need to remind ourselves that it's okay and that we can push through it and that we can increase our tolerance to failure and reposition it as an opportunity to learn and to get the things you really want. Okay, so we covered quite a few things there around fear of failure. And again, if imposter syndrome, which is quite linked to this, is important to you as well, I will leave that link here and in the description so you can go and take a look. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope that it has given you a new perspective around fear of failure and given you that next step towards getting rid of it, when it comes to the things that you want in life and giving you that next route to go towards them. So I will see you next Monday. Take care of yourselves and see you in the comments.